Fear has been a constant companion of human race since hunter-gatherer days. It is a powerful force that creates as well as destroys. Unlike the animal kingdom, however, humans have an innate gift to understand fear in all its entirety. How does fear manifest in everyday life? What about moments of crisis that shakes our very being? How does it trigger an inevitable chain reaction of dysfunctional behaviors? What role does society, culture, religion, and technology play in harboring and amplifying fear? How do we foster awareness and resilience in the wake of fear in order to live through it? To explore this subject and more, here is a conversation with Sudha Hooda, an executive director and board member of a multinational technology company. I am a proud mother to a loving teenager, a curious soul on a journey of self discovery, embracing lessons life has to offer each day, Sudha says. Welcome, Sudha, to this conversation.
Thank you, Milind.
So happy to meet you and reconnect with you. I think after over a decade, I guess, we met 2012, 13, something like that. And though we haven't been in touch as such in between, but yes, off and on. But thanks to this podcast, we are reconnecting. So I'm super excited.
I'm happy as well to meet you after so long, virtually though.
Yeah, virtually though. Yeah, we are doing this recording over a Zoom call. The format of our podcast all along has been that as a design philosophy, we have that the narrative of the conversation is completely held and controlled by the guest who comes on our show. They choose the subjects and topics that they wish to explore or share. And,
Sure.
as a host, my job is essentially to anchor the conversation within two boundary conditions, as I call it. One is the time boundary, and second is the subject boundary, which is what the subject, our guests decide. Now, you and I were in conversation for a while now, and you've chosen to speak on a theme which has never been explored on the Wings podcast, which is uh, the theme of fear and loss. I wonder why you have chosen these two themes.
So, Milind, when you asked me to pick up a topic that is personal to me, and when I reflected on my life thus far, I realized that I can divide it into, spheres of being, absolutely free, raring to go, no fear, and being extremely fearful of things that may happen in my life. And that triggered me to reflect and wonder that what is it, in terms of fear that shapes our lives in different ways. I have been impacted by this fear emotion right from my childhood till now, and I have been learning to deal with fear and in different ways, and also moving past it to finally realize, facing the fear, as they say. So there are a lot of jingoisms on this. Dar ke aage jeet hai, and all of that. We all keep hearing these kind of things. But when you are actually in the middle of something which you fear, when it's staring back at you, that's when you realize that, okay, what are the different things that you can do to overcome it, right? So I think that was the trigger for me.
You're right, Sudha. I mean, fear in many ways is so fundamental to us. I mean, as an infant also, the first thing when the child is born, I mean, the sense of protection that it needs, it doesn't understand the idea of protection is not there in as many articulated words, but then to be held and to be protected, physical security. I mean, it starts from there, and of course, over the years, it grows, and you are absolutely right. And I think Probably, I don't know. I have this hypothesis that fear is one of the few fundamental forces that drives human activity. For good or bad, I'm not getting into the judgments of that, but then it's a huge driver of human act, isn't it?
Absolutely. So there is no two ways about it that, fear is the push, the trigger, that, actually the fear of failing or fear of anything that makes us push towards learning, towards growth. Because unless, we actually get to the part where we actually face our fears and move past, there is no growth. And a lot of the actions I think in my life have been, and it could be true for most other people, that fear of having bad health may trigger you, may push you to take care of yourself. Fear of not doing well in school may push you to start studying more, to put in effort. So those kind of things. But, I want to emphasize here that these things, as you reflect, in hindsight, they all fall in place. But when you're going through it, like as a child, if I would say that there were very basic things. Andhere mein bahar mat jao. Don't go out when it's dark, right? So if you don't do well, you'll never get a good job. So these fears are instilled as part of our growing up process, where to get someone to do something, there is always this, fear factor that is used, that what can go wrong if you don't do this. So that was something that I was, always very mindful about. And in my family, I used to try to break away from the fear that was being instilled, whether it was that what will people say, the fear of the society, whether it was about, doing things which were different, anything it was. So I think I always wanted to push the limits to show my parents or to whoever it was around me, my relatives, and I come from a really large, very close-knit family. So my mother has 6, 7 brothers, and they're all very close to her. And she's the only sister. So, those kind of things that, she was the only daughter, then I was the only daughter. So the fear of doing things because of your gender. So there were a lot of these things. So I used to try to break away from all the fear that was being instilled just to prove it that it's okay. And
And
my thought process always was that you can either stay wherever you are being fearful, or you can just move past and see what it is, what will happen, what is the worst that can happen.
I
So
know, you are a, correct me if I'm wrong, you are a Haryanvi Jat girl.
that's right.
And
Yes.
they are known to be bold and courageous, so it's interesting, so maybe talk us through some early life experiences where growing up in a large traditional Haryanvi family which believes in a lot of parampara and tradition. How has that uh, shaped your understanding or experience of this fundamental human emotion called fear?
Sure. So, like I just shared with you that my mother has a large set of brothers, and coming from where we come from, there is a lot of tradition involved. And in the name of tradition, there is a lot of sense of boundary, control that is transferred onto the generation after generation. So one is that, oh, the family is so esteemed, and if you go somewhere against it, so the loss of face in society, so that fear, right? And then she was the only daughter, then I'm the only daughter, I have 2 brothers. So being that because of my gender, like I said, being a girl, that there are some things which you are told that you are not supposed to do, or is not the right thing for you to do, because there is, again, the whole thing about what will go wrong if you do that, why you shouldn't be doing it, what can happen. And my attitude always was that if it goes wrong, it will happen only once. So it's not like, all the time, if you just keep thinking about that. So from school onwards, from college onwards, in college, I stood for elections. I was in Delhi University, and I was the first female prime minister of my college. And at that time also, so politics is dirty, you'll be kidnapped, something will happen. So there was always preempting of what can go wrong and why you shouldn't do what you are doing, because of the impact it'll have on you. And then, it's always that I told you so. What can happen? And still you're going ahead with doing what you do. So I think that particular part was very strong in my growing up years. And hearing it right from the start, and again, not just traditional, we are also very religious. Our family is very religious. So there was always this fear of God. And that if you don't do this, then God will punish you. So it was not just the society, the living people, or human beings that you see in flesh and blood, but it was always this invisible power that you have to keep pleased so that you don't face the wrath of that Almighty. So, which always, made me think that this doesn't sound like a good concept, that I have to always try to please the gods and do as I'm being told. And it was always that if you listen to your parents, if you listen to your elders, if you do what you're being told, then everything is okay. Otherwise, there's something wrong that can happen, and you don't want to know what that is, kind of a thing. So I think that whole thing really made me kind of uh, trying to break away from what was being told, even if sometimes it was just to prove a point.
No, but what you say is something very interesting here. I mean, what I'm sensing here is this consistent "ye mat karo, wo mat karo, ye sahi hai, ye galat hai," this is right, this is wrong, and all that stuff can be responded in probably two ways. One is experimenting with what if I do something which I'm told not to do, and second is outright rebellion, which is, I don't care. If you're pushing me, I'm going to push you back very hard. These could be two different responses, isn't it?
Absolutely. See, the thing is that, okay, I'll give you an example. I was fear of dark, and we used to stay in a duple house. So if the whole family is sitting together, and if we are sitting on the first floor, and anybody tells me to go down and get water, I would stand at the staircase and I would just freeze there and wouldn't go down because I was scared of dark. And so I'm just saying that at some point I realized that, okay, I, like, in the things that other things that were being told, now this was my own fear, this nobody had told me.
Sure.
I was fearful of something dark, and I used to think that this is stemming from the all the fear that has been instilled in me, and what can go wrong. There can be a snake, there can be something, or there can be a person who will catch hold of me in my own house, right? So it was just so, again, gradually, like you said, that there are two ways of dealing with it. And I think it was just one day that I decided, okay, let me see what happens. Let me just try to go down the steps instead of just standing there and waiting that somebody else will, wait it out and just go and do what I've been asked to do to go down. I just did it. And I realized that I can. So there are things like that, like, maybe cliff jumping, that little fear when you have that what can go wrong just when you're about to jump. And then when you take the leap of faith and you just jump and you have that exhilarating feeling that, yes, you did it and you're still there and nothing really happened. So I think to be able to overcome that fear, to be able to push the limit, I'm not denying the fact that you have to recognize, in terms of safety, or, recognize concern, that the whole emotion from where this is coming from. It's from a place of concern, right?
Of course. I mean,
Where
it's a place of concern, and especially in cultures like ours in India, it also comes from a kind of a love which becomes very possessive in many ways. I mean, smothering even. But then, despite all this, you also chose an education or a career in law, and wearing black coats at the Patiala House. What's the story behind that?
So again, from my profession to the choice of subject that I took in my graduation, and I mentioned, standing for elections. So all of these were always considered as something which was going out of the traditional, expected whether careers, or something that was considered as safer. So this was in 97, 2000. So after I finished my graduation, my father would have preferred if I did masters in business administration, because it would have got me a clean job, something which is a 9 to 5 job where I don't have to, hustle. My mother wanted me to become a professor or a lecturer, be in teaching line basically, because that's what women should do so that you can look after your house. And the profession of law was something that was completely looked down upon. One, because we don't have lawyers in our family, and two, it was like, considered that somebody who can't do anything is the one who does law. They are like flies everywhere, and every second person, if you go to any of these district courts or lower courts, they're like flies, fluttering everywhere, asking you to take them up as their counsel. So it was not something which was a respectable profession, and definitely, I also realized when I joined law that in those times, and I'm from Delhi University, we were three females in a class of 60. So I realized that it's not a very preferred. Now, of course, things are different. Now it's after 12. There's so many options that are
Sure,
available, and
sure.
things have moved a long way. But it was something that was not some favored profession. So it definitely was something that was told that why would you do law? You'll not be able to do anything. There's nobody in the family who's done law to be able to guide you or to provide you that footing. And in profession itself, it's horrible. If the kind of people you'll deal with, is all on the other side of the law. So yeah, so it was.
Yeah, talking about Patiala House and Delhi, I'm reminded of this beautiful show on Netflix called Mamla Legal Hai, which is a satire on the realities of courts and lawyers in India. And I liked it because it was not critical of lawyers. It also showed the life of lawyers, which is so difficult. It's not easy to the extent of surviving the politics of a smaller lower court where every lawyer is fighting the other lawyer to get a case. And even if you just get to do notarize a few documents for a few years, that's what entry level lawyers are told. um, to the extent of getting your own first case or set of cases. And then what you said is right. I mean, when you're practicing law, you are dealing with clients who could be on the other side of the law. So uh, I'm sure experience of fear through threats in your own legal profession must have been a very different reality for you, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Any instance that you recall where you had to, as a lawyer in the lower courts early days, you were threatened or pushed?
No, in fact, what you just mentioned, in the lower courts, it is easier to make a living if you are representing these small-time crooks, which is if you for these small thefts, because the cases get over soon,
Correct.
and you know, it's something like I remember when I used to go to Patiala House, my senior was making a living out of cases of 420, and also getting the driving licenses, the
Sure.
getting them.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was basically a quick buck, right? So that, and when you say instance, the only thing which was like a turning point for me to switch to corporate was when I actually passed away in court once, because it was so crowded. Patiala House was, Delhi is extremely hot, and it's I actually realized that everybody is a lawyer. So you wearing the black coat, there will be at least 100 more people who are wearing a black coat pushing each other. So when my case was called out by the judge, and it is very unlike what we watch on most of these movies where it is glamorized. It is so hot, stuffy, suffocating inside the courtroom also. Very trying conditions where they all have to work. I actually passed out. And after that, the judge started remembering me because I passed out in his court more than anything else. That, oh, there she is, please give her space, don't suffocate her around, kind of a thing. So it is actually very trying. And, there is, I won't say politics, but in terms of seniority to get a chamber,
Sure.
to be able to get a decent place to sit, I think it's a long process.
Yeah. I mean, again, I also want to kind of bring a very recent incident, a gruesome incident that we all have heard about, is this very brutal rape and murder of a young trainee doctor in Calcutta. I mean, we are recording this conversation just a couple of days after this incident. The matter was just yesterday, I believe, heard in the Supreme Court as a suo motu case. uh,
Right.
I mean, the incident of that nature uh, would perpetrate fear of a very different kind at a mass level, isn't it? Whatever has happened is tragic, sad. I hope the law acts quickly on this, and the faith in justice system is restored. But nonetheless, after effects of Nirbhaya, which happened almost a decade back, continues even today. Or and despite Nirbhaya, despite POSCO and POSH and so many other acts, perpetration of violence against women of this nature continues and amplifies fear, isn't it?
So, Milind, I agree. It's extremely disturbing. And when you take it upon yourself, you feel that these are all big words which you say, overcoming fear and moving past it, staring fear and trying to overcome. The fact remains that incidents like this, the kind of emotions that are triggered in the fraternity, because I was hearing one of the doctors speak about it, where she said that her hospital is somewhere close by. If not, she doesn't work in the same hospital, and she has been going to her gym for last couple of years. But after this incident happened, and when she went to the gym during the daytime, and she saw a bunch of guys, she started feeling suffocated, and she couldn't exercise. She had to leave. So this is the impact, because incidents like this where you feel that, like I said, we can use all kind of big words that, okay, this is a safe place. I work here. These are my colleagues who know me well. It's not a place where, it's not like a nightclub where drunk people are around, or there is a perceived threat to my safety. So where you're feeling safe, you're doing your job, and in the course of things, if something like this can happen, so this really has a long term impact, not just on the fraternity, the doctors, I would say, but across. So things like which, I have heard this from my mother. I used to do a lot of long distance driving. I used to leave at 4 in the morning. I used to drive to Rajasthan. I have driven to I've done a lot of driving, and sometimes 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock at night, and alone. So my mother always told this to me that, what if something happens to you? And I would tell her, why don't you articulate? What is worse that can happen to me? And she would say, what if somebody stops your car, rapes you, and kills you? So I would always tell her that, you're very imaginative, you're being very creative. And by incidents like this, you actually realize that these are things nobody thinks of until they happen. I don't think the doctor had gone for her duty or, finished her job and was resting, thinking that this is something that is a possibility. So in your mind, you are extremely, you're safe, you're contented, you are satisfied with the way things are going, and then something like this happens. So I mean, it's something where nobody can actually, what should I say, articulate or can conclude on why this would have happened. But I also want to say that once incident like this happens, like you were just saying when we started the conversation, there are two ways to deal with it. One is that all the doctors start fearing and stop going for their work, or all women stop going out because it's not safe for them. So this is the messaging that comes up. Or the other thing is that you face what has happened. You try to go into it with your eyes open. You recognize, you realize that this is something which is a possibility, and go on with your day, your life, your profession. So I think in my life, I have chosen the latter. Wherever and whenever I have been at a juncture where I was like, now what? I was trying to tell myself that, look, there is no denying the fact that this is a universal emotion, right? Like you were saying, from a child to adulthood till now to where I am in my life, there are everyone goes through different phases of fear in different parts of our life. So it is natural, it's common. And the only thing is that whether it is triggered by perceived threats or something that actually happens. So those perceived threats actually happen in your life, and then what course it takes for you. So I was just sharing that how I have realized is that until I got married, I used to consider everything which related, what was being told to me with fear as a perceived threat. That they are fearful of this, so they are transferring their emotions on me, which I used to tell my parents also, that you have gone through this is your reality, and you want to transfer your fears on me. So I'm not going to take them as, my reality. and just break away from whatever I wanted to do, whether it was going out, whether it was, doing things that I believed in. And I realized that at times it was as trivial as climbing down the stairs and realizing that it's just the gap between switching on the light, because it's just dark until then, or just standing on the staircase and wondering what can go wrong, whether there's something waiting for me down which is going to pounce on me. So, in a controlled manner, facing it, that really taught me that, I can go out. So I would be lying if I say that it never struck me that whatever my mother used to say, that if you're going out at night, and what if your car breaks down? What if something happens to you untowardly? And we'll not even hear about it, because that time there were no cell phones. And I would always motivate myself that I will find out. Let me go and find out that what is it that I can do if my car breaks down? Can I not fix it? Can I not, take care of it? And in this fear that something might go wrong, why should I not explore or do what my heart desires? So this thinking, I was, completely sure that this is the way to be, this is the way to live. So, until I lost my husband, and ours was a love marriage. He was a fighter pilot. We met when I was still studying law. And after having met, I chose what I wanted to do. I wanted to join the defense because he was in the forces. I didn't join the forces, the JAG or the law cadre, because I thought that both of us shouldn't be in the uniform. It was always this fear of fighter pilot thing, was that what if something goes wrong? What if he has a crash? And this was not in my mind, but it was in the minds of others, my friends who advised me, who told me to think about it, or things like that. But like I said, I was in this wave of riding high where I thought nothing can ever go wrong in my life. And we were married for almost 6, 7 years, and after having dated for some time. And when I was carrying my child, when I was 3 months pregnant, my husband had a fatal crash. So that was the turning point in my life where I actually realized that your fears do come true. So something wrong that people say might happen can actually happen to you. And then you are at those crossroads where you wonder that now what? You never thought something can go wrong. You never thought you'll be faced with something like this, because this is not a controlled, circumstance where you can switch on the light and everything will be back to normal. And you can face your fears. So all these things that I used to tell myself, I was at loss myself. That, okay, now how do I deal with life? To be with my husband, I had taken a break in my career. I had quit my job and I had joined him where he was in a modified field area. And that's when the crash happened. And I didn't have a job. So I think that is when, for a brief moment of time, for at least 6 months. So because I lost my husband when I was 2.5, 3 months pregnant, and my son was born after 6 months. So during that period of time, I actually experienced, what worse can happen, what can go wrong. Now there's nothing. When you feel that you've hit the rock bottom, you feel that there's nothing else that can happen in your life which is worse than this. So I used to feel that now I'm done, it's done. Life is now, there's nothing that more left to see in my life, at least. There's nothing that can happen which is bad or worse than this. But like I said, it was only for those 6 months until my son was born. My son was born, after 6 months. And when I held him for the first time, I realized that that entire phase of my life, I was 30 when I gave birth to my son. The previous 30 years of my life, when I used to think that nothing can go wrong in my life, I should try it out, were now, I hope nothing goes wrong in my life. What if something happens to my son? So now I was driven by fear. And that's how I say that I mark my life in two ways, and which is, one is like having completely the attitude of being like daring, bold, that nothing can happen to me and I can take whatever comes in my life head on, uh, to a place where I was so fearful, anxious, that I used to stay up at night to check with my fingers whether he's breathing or not, whether he's okay or not. And I would not get to, I would not get sleep. I would not let anybody touch him. I would not let anybody hold him. I was like an obsessed parent, because I was always fearful that what if they do something where it's going to be, harmful for my son? What if something happens to him? In fact, even in the hospital, The doctors are very upset. The day I gave birth to him, it was a normal delivery. I told them that I want to go home. They keep you under observation for 24 to 48 hours. I brought him home. I was like, I don't want to be in this hospital because there the nurses take care of my son and I'm not in control of the situation. So I just didn't want to let go of him anywhere. And I realized that actually what fear can be. It was only so, like I said, until the crash happened, I never thought, I never made peace, I never had any direct interaction with the emotion of fear because I thought nothing can go wrong. And whatever it is, I can take care of it. I can face my fears. But after having lost my husband, I realized that things which you feel can only happen to other people can happen to you. And you are just not prepared. You don't know where it's going to go from here now. What is it that you need to do? How do you want to pick up the pieces of your life and take it forward? And I never wanted to be a single parent. I never wanted to raise my child by myself. I always wanted, him to have a family, to be able to spend time with my child. Um, so it was like a situation where now I had to realize that, okay, what is it that I need to do, so that I don't let go of my child. So this phase where I'm saying that I didn't want to even let him be away for a fraction of a second was something that I was going through. And of course, like I said, I was jobless. So I realized, slowly where I decided that it is what it is. So that is where, you decide that either you just live in this fear of what is going to happen to my son, or you slowly start picking up the pieces of your life to understand that where does it go from here and start moving on.
Thank you so much for sharing something so personal, uh, and in some way universal too, because each one of us have experiences of deep crisis in one's life, either in the form of losing one's loved ones, or it could be anything else. But then I think what happens is our earth gets shattered. I mean, I have gone through it
Absolutely.
several times in my life, uh, and every time, uh, as if somebody's removed the carpet under your feet, and probably forget carpet under the feet. There is no ground to stand on.
Correct.
There's nothing to hold yourself, and then there is a huge sense. I have personally experienced these range of emotions, and I don't know whether there is a theory around it or not. I have no clue. But then the first experience I have had when my earth has got my world has got shattered because of an experience of extreme personal crisis and fear is there is shock. you know I have been frozen, and I have remained frozen in those moments for a long time. After some certain time, I distinctly recall as a pattern, the shock turned into an anger as to why did this happen to me? What have I done to deserve this? Why me kind of stuff. So that helplessness, frustration used to get manifested in anger, and I would probably be angry at people around me for no reason. But I was just simply angry with myself. And then I used to then move to a phase where I used to just about reject everything. I would stay away. I will disconnect myself. I said, मुझे इस दुनिया से कोई लेना देना नहीं है. This is not a safe place for me. This is not the right place for me. These are not my people. I don't know. The fear has taken a phase of absolute rejection of just about everyone and everything, to the extent of living in my own cocoon for a certain period of time. And then having lived through the cocoon, at some point in time, just as you said, when you came down from the staircase in your house, you just flipped a switch so that the darkness turned into light. There is that flipping of switch moment happened to me, where I said, okay, I have to accept. I have to move on. So this whole phase of shock, anger, rejection is inevitable, I believe. At least I talk from my own personal experience, to come to a stage where you say, I accept my reality. Now let me see, what do I do with it? But
Right.
Of course, this is wisdom in hindsight, and as you're in the grips of the whole thing. And I know, as a part of our preparation for this conversation, we were also talking about uh, your experiences with meditation of different kinds, which has probably also helped you uh, to become accepting of your reality and to become resilient in the face of fear. So, love to hear from you once again, those moments of reflections you have had through your meditation practices, whatever they may be.
So I want to, share here that, like you said, the emotions, I think, are all of us go through the same range of emotions. When any event that you're fearing, that what if this happens, when it actually stares back at you, you are never prepared for it. When it's staring you back, you always go through the cycle of why me, and then you try and make some sense out of it, that, okay, how do you get out of it? There is no option but to face it. You realize that, okay, why me is something, you don't have answers to, but you find a way out of it. So in that whole process of finding a way out of it, I think, is the part where acceptance comes into the picture, where you realize. So, and that's why I was saying, when the whole thing about God fearing, or the fears that are instilled, so you actually start questioning. When you are why me, you actually start questioning, is it something that I did to deserve this? Is it a consequence of my own actions, because of which I'm going through this particular, event in my life? And the fear just, kind of gets magnified, right? That, okay, now what do I do so that nothing else goes wrong in my life? Because, like I said, when you're holding your child, you don't want anything to go wrong now. For that brief period when I had not given birth to my child, I had no attachment to this, fetus growing in my womb. And I was not fearful. I was like, now whatever had to happen has happened. And I was going through those emotions of why me, and where did I go wrong, and all of those things. But after you have a living thing which is part of you in your hands, you realize that, you again, the whole thing of what you never felt of being fearful comes back to you. And uh, I went through moments of anxiety, extreme possessiveness, and that what if something happens? And I realized that this was taking a toll. Of course, this takes a toll on your mental health, and you're not able to operate out of it. You don't want to work because you don't want to leave your child alone, and you don't trust anybody else because what if they do something which is not good for your child? So this whole thing of fear, it manifests in different ways. The way you behave with everybody, cut off, nobody come to me. I don't need anybody. I don't want anybody, kind of a thing. Uh, but when you are trying to find a way out of it, I think one is that you realize the value of having a support system, which may be your friends, family, whatever it is, in that form. And then gradually it's the process. I think it's part of healing, where you realize that uh, not everything is in your control, which is where the meditation part of it came to me, because I did Vipassana. I have done I have done Art of Living, Sudarshan Kriya, I have done Isha's Shambhavi also. So in all of these, and what I realized the common theme was um, being in the present and accepting whatever it is which is coming. So as part of that, when you are supposed to be silent, as part of these many of these practices, you reflect back on your life. You reflect back on your life from the time your memory goes. You think of all the rights, all the wrongs that you think were right or wrong, right? You try to rationalize that this could be something that led to this. So you have all this time in the world, and you reach a stage in your practice where your mind actually goes blank because you have nothing more to think. Where you actually start, realizing that. This is what it is. This breath which is going in and coming out, this is all you are aware of. This is all that is in your control. There is nothing else that you can. And I think it took me a really, really long time. It was a long journey to be able to find that place in my life where I realized that not everything is in my control. And this also came from the fact that me being this anxious, overbearing mother, was I could see that it was having an impact on my child.
Of
I
course.
was living by myself and not letting anybody come. I would never, even if he's crying, I would not let anybody hold him. And as my son started growing a bit, he was a toddler. If he was, usually children are wary of strangers. So they want to cling to their mother. They don't want to go to other people when they meet people. My son was the opposite. If he would see a new face, he would want to go to them. He would be like willingly. And I realized that maybe, this is a sign that he needs people, he needs company. And I'm the one who's being like this fearful person and doing exactly the same thing which I thought my parents were doing, transferring my fears on my child and trying to pick a life where I feel that this is safe for him.
Maybe that was
So
a
that's
way, I don't know, since you're saying this, I'm just picturing in my mind those instances and I'm imagining, and pardon me if I get all this wrong, but then here you are, very rightfully so, rejecting of everybody and being possessive and protective of your son, as if life is telling you that you can't trust anybody, nothing is safe out there,
absolutely.
and
Yes.
fear is the only reality. And then your son, your little toddler son, unlike any other toddlers, would actually cling to strangers, which somehow I'm
Yes.
getting a sense that maybe life was giving a message to you that that's what is the reality, being open. I mean, you know, I was just reading a few lines.
It is, Philip. I want to tell you here that even in restaurants where we would go to eat, he
Yes.
would just go, if any stranger would smile to him, he would run to their table and try and have a conversation. And they would be like, how sweet. They've given him chocolates, like, oh, what a friendly child. How sweet is he? That kind of a thing. And I would always be like, oh, but what is he doing? So that's what I realized. So this was like, the universe's way of telling me that
Absolutely.
he's not fearful. As a child, he's not fearful. He's not wary of strangers. He's not shying away from holding a conversation, going to someone, seeing, exploring. If he finds something interesting, running to, explore more on what this is about. And I'm the one who's trying to cling on to him, to hold on to him, where because of my life experiences, I'm trying to be like, no, this is not how you should be. So definitely, I learned it
The
from
hard
him.
way, the hard way, I guess.
Hard
But
way
then
from him. Yeah,
from your child, I mean, that's how life's ways are. But then, what a beautiful thing you have just said. And actually, it, puts in perspective a few lines that I read the other day of J. Krishnamurti, where, allow me if I can read these few lines to you. And I quote Krishnamurti here, where he says, "There is physical fear. When you see a snake, a wild animal, instinctively that is fear. That is normal, healthy, and natural.
correct.
But the psychological protection of oneself, that is the desire to be always certain, breeds fear. A mind that is seeking always to be certain is a dead mind because there is no certainty in life, there is no permanency. And because you try to establish permanency, you experience fear, which essentially is saying accept the world as a transient reality. And in the
Absolutely.
moment, what you feel is right, act it out. Uh, I guess those are little steps, which of course one is to learn for oneself by oneself and not from anybody else. I mean, there is no book, there is no guru, there is nothing else, and being open to the whole thing. But then I think the
So
world that
since you quoted Krishnamurti, I want to say that no matter what book, what guru or whoever, says, Krishnamurti was the biggest advocate who said that you have to experience yourself,
correct,
not because I'm saying it.
correct.
You have to go through it, live through it. Do not take it as a second-hand knowledge that somebody has told you. And
And
that's what I realized, that the baggage of our past is something that we are carrying, which we have to shed. It's not somebody else who can, take it off our backs.
and in the same talk, in conclusion, Krishnamurti says that if you seek a way, a method, a system to be rid of fear, you will be everlastingly caught in fear. But if you
Absolutely.
understand fear, which can only take place when you come directly in contact with it, that is when all fear ceases.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of this line of thought where it says that, when you let it pass through you is the only way that you make peace with it and it dissipates. It's not by blocking it, it's not by shutting it, it's not by pushing it. No, I'm not fearful. No, I don't know what it is, or trying to block it. So absolutely.
And also in the world that we live in today, which is you know so hyperactive in terms of information dissemination, broadcast. I mean, there's so much of information that is coming in our way. A lot of it is nonsense, but then the reels and the Instagram posts and the Facebook posts and news media, everything is throwing everything that is happening around the world, be it the Gaza war, be it the Ukraine war. I mean, honestly, yes. I mean, it causes fear, but then what do I do? I mean, one, as you very beautifully said earlier part of the conversation, one is the idea of fear, and then actually experiencing it and going through it are two different things. And probably what the world is doing to us, this is my personal belief, is ensuring that we are caught in a perpetual web of fear. Like this artificial intelligence thing that is being talked about. I mean, the first thing that is being, the narrative that is coming out is of fear. It is not coming out of hope. And I mean, as they say, human mind reacts more to loss aversion than to what gains we have. I mean, we have tendency to be trapped in fear rather than, pursuing hope. I guess the pursuit of hope, and saying that despite all the drudgery and all the mess that the world is in today, it is still a beautiful world because it's the only world we have. It's the
Which
only
is what you
life we
have to
have.
believe in. Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think another thing that goes is, the line that says that be wary of what you believe in, because if what you believe is what you will become, and it will happen to you. So I think these are choice points, according to me, where we say, yes, there is fear, but I don't want to engage in the idea of fear, but
Every day in my
every
every
day,
living
every
moment.
moment. I mean, and then face it as it comes and find my own little ways of becoming resilient and have faith and hope in the beauty of life. Just like your son in a restaurant as a toddler would go up to a stranger and give a big smile. Uh,
Absolutely.
I mean,
So
I
I
guess,
think, Milind, I want to just add here that, the incident that we were talking about, which happened in West Bengal. Uh, so I
yes,
think that is another reminder that yes, things will go wrong, things
yes,
can go wrong, but should that be a reason why, ladies, females are not allowed in the profession, not uh, permitted to do night duties, or should everybody now in that hospital be fearful of the fact that what can go wrong and then just pack the bags and leave? So I think those are the turning points in our lives. We all talk about it at a distance, that something may happen, something that can happen, but when actually something happens and it stares you back at your face, that is where you are at a decision point where you make a choice for yourself. And both are fine, whatever choice somebody makes. If somebody decides that this is it, I don't want to take it forward, is fine. If somebody says, no, this has happened, but I'm going to go on with my choices in my life, that's fine as well. But I think that these are the actual incidents where you realize that what I was saying, that the fear of something happening has actually happened. Now
correct.
what?
Absolutely. I mean, and what a beautiful note we are ending this conversation on, Sudha, that fear is real. Loss emerging out of those fear is real. As long as it is experienced and felt in one's own context and in one's own life, and one derives lessons and articulates actions to hold the bull by the horn, as they say, and
Absolutely.
and walk through the fear. Uh, there is this dark night of the soul, as Christian philosophy says, that one has to go through the eye of the needle to be able to see the world on the other side. And I just want, as a part of this conversation, leave you with, uh, if it is okay with you, a small gift in the form of certain words which have been very precious to me in my life. Uh, the words have remained the same, but the meanings have evolved over a period of time. So, just as a small gesture of our love and friendship, if I can offer this little gift by reading out these lines by Khalil Gibran, and he speaks about fear like this. He says, and I quote Gibran, "It is said that before entering the sea, a river trembles with fear. She looks back at the path she has traveled from the peaks of the mountains, the long winding road crossing forests and villages. And in front of her, she sees an ocean so vast that to enter there seems nothing more than to disappear forever. But there is no other way. The river cannot go back. Nobody can go back. To go back is impossible in existence. The river needs to take the risk of entering the ocean, because only then will fear disappear. Because that's where the river will know it's not about disappearing into the ocean, but becoming the ocean.
Beautiful. This is really beautiful. Thank you so much
Sudha, this has
for
been
reading.
such a beautiful, beautiful conversation. You have left me with a lot of courage, a lot of hope. I wonder where this conversation has left you.
It was really meaningful for me, and it has reiterated, Milind, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, even if you are in the tunnel, which for me is a dark place.
For everyone, it's a dark place, but the reality is the tunnel always, always ends, and there is always light waiting for us, ready to embrace at the end of it. So thank you very much. Such a pleasure and joy talking to you. You take good care of yourself,
Thank
and
you.
wish you good luck in everything that you do in life. And hopefully see you sometime somewhere soon.
Yes, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you for your time today, my dear listeners. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri, signing off. Goodbye, take care, and stay safe. This podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be considered as a piece of any professional advice. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of its guest. Creators of this podcast expressly disclaim any and all liability or responsibility for any direct or indirect, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of this podcast. For feedback and suggestions, please write to wingsindia75 at gmail.com. Thank you.